Everyone loves a good mystery, but what happens when that mystery becomes your reality? For some Redditors, the unsettling truth of being followed, watched, and even obsessed over has left them with stories they'll never forget. From anonymous notes to chilling encounters, these tales of stalking will make your skin crawl and have you double-checking your locks tonight. Buckle up, because these true stories take us deep into the lives of those who faced their worst fears head-on. You/heretic housewife responded. An ex-boyfriend stalked me in the mid-late 1990s. He'd show up places I went and make sure I saw him, but never approached me. He lived in a town an hour away, so there was no legitimate reason for me to keep running into him while going about my daily life. It was deliberate stalking. Since he never made threats, and was always on public property, there wasn't anything I could do about it except ignore him and hope he didn't escalate. I eventually discovered how he always knew where I was. He had been cheating on me with one of my best friends, and after I broke up with him, she continued to cheat on her husband with him. My ex would use my friend to find out where I would be. While making small talk, my friend and I would talk about our plans for the day, weekend, etc. And she'd report back to my ex. It made me much more private and disconnected with my friends. It was a very serious betrayal on multiple levels, and I never quite shook the feeling of being preyed upon. You/Mandragora's Dragon responded. Guy I dated in high school. Broke up with him after graduation and he went fucking nuts. Tried breaking into my mom's house when I still lived there, followed me everywhere. When I got a new car he called my work from the business next door and told me my new license plate. One night he called me 75 times in 2 hours. This all came to a head when he attacked me, during the day, when I was walking through downtown with a friend, and he went to jail for a few months. Meanwhile I moved an hour away, changed my number, got a new job, and blocked him on any social media I had, in addition to locked down privacy settings. I have since heard that he's moved to a different town and is still wildly unstable. My life has gotten so much better and LVE had so many positive changes, and I hope he never hears about any of it. As for how it changes you, you're constantly looking over your shoulder. If you're alone at night, even walking to your car, it's incredibly difficult to just not run in and immediately lock the door. I'm so afraid he'll find me. I know if given the chance he'd kill me this time. You/Baby Ginger Spice responded. I was 13, he was 12. We had math class together, and he had a huge crush on me. However, he was also the biggest pervert LVE ever met in my life. He would look down girls' shorts and grabbed their asses. He got caught sneaking into the girls' locker room as well. So it was no surprise that he began to harass me when I told him no. He would wait for me at my locker every day and whisper that I was some hot stuff, and that he wanted to rape me in the girls' locker room. He started following me to class, and I realized that a friend of mine had given him my class periods. I told my teachers, the school counselor, the vice principal, but nothing was done against this kid. He started following me out to the bus. Eventually he knew my full name, my class schedule, my bus number, my student ID, and was trying to get a hold of my address and phone number. He then started asking me again, and I said no. He got pissed and claimed he was bringing a gun to school the next day to kill me and my brothers. He did bring the gun, but I had already told my math teacher about it. Thankfully, the school saw that it was a fucking airsoft gun and suspended him for a week. It was end of May by this point, so they couldn't change my classes. That was nearly 2 years ago, and we don't attend the same school now, so I'm not too worried about him finding me. However, I use everything in private browsing and I always look behind me if I'm walking. I stop and turn around to see if anybody's following me. That shit fucks you up. You/deleted responded. While living overseas, I was raped by an acquaintance. In this particular country, it's common for victims of rape to be silenced and paid off by the family in exchange for not pressing charges. For 6 months, he would come to my home in attempt to talk to me. He and his friends would sit outside my apartment building. His friends started sending me text messages calling me a bitch and slut. His family started waiting for me outside of work. Then his mother, and on a separate occasion his priest, would come into my work to speak to me or my boss. I'll never forget the time I was brought into a room with his mother. Panic doesn't even begin to describe how I felt. Since my boss was my visa sponsor, his mom and his preacher came into my work to speak to my boss about a payoff. My boss would encourage them to not come to my work, however, he wanted to save face and not outright ban them from the premises. The rape itself changed me. Being held against my will in my own home for 2 hours changed me. But being stalked for 6 months really changed me. My male friends would walk me home from work. I had one friend whom would sleep on my sofa sometimes. I was afraid of leaving my home alone. The harassment only stopped when he went to prison for 1 year. In that time, I changed jobs and moved to another part of the city. I developed PTSD, but I still stayed in the country for a few more years. I didn't want him to win, whatever that meant. I received counseling on the US military base, which I will be forever grateful for. I still have trouble trusting people. I get uncomfortable when guys stare at me for whatever reason, and am very jumpy. I have received extensive therapy since LVE been back in the States, but I sometimes wonder if immediately coming back home would have put me on a healthier life course instead of feeling constantly like I'm struggling. You/deleted responded. My case isn't as extreme as the others, but it was fairly recent. Like the last year. I'm in college, and last semester a boy that I had no relation to whatsoever began to hound me for attention and make strange noises at me. He would often hover around me whenever I was alone and would try to get close whenever I was in a group. He would approach me in the middle of class and say nothing, only staring and smiling until I at one point asked what he was doing, then he frowned and walked away. I caught him a few times following me out of class, and I know he wasn't walking to his next class because I always go to the parking lot to leave. The one time I did catch him following me, I bolted off campus and called my boyfriend for support. After that day, he stopped following me but still stared at me. I did tell the professor about it and he told me that I would be okay and he would keep that boy away. Well, just last week I had another encounter with him in my city. I was at a festival with my boyfriend, and while he was paying for food, that same boy ran up to me and said, "Do you remember me?" Only he looked furious and was about a few inches away from my face. I froze in fear and could only mutter out a few words until my boyfriend came back and got in between us, putting his arm around my shoulder and mad-dogging the stalker. That boy just said okay, awkward. Bye, and he walked away. Before we left, I caught that boy hovering near a stall looking at us, so I made sure that when we were leaving that we weren't being followed to our car. You/cat_explosion responded. A friend of mine had a stalker who was well known to fall in love with every girl that smiled at him. He was in the same year as us in high school, super awkward Naruto run kinda kid. It started small with him wanting to talk to her in between classes all the time, waiting on her for everything and trying to get in conversations between our friend group. Which was okay at first, but he would not contribute in any way and wouldn't leave if we were talking about private HS girl stuff. We were talking about a pregnancy scare I had that week and he eavesdropped the whole time, and later that day he asked her about it. He said that only whores get in these situations and that he was glad that she's never had a boyfriend and saving herself, which she wasn't, she just didn't have a boyfriend at the time. Off she flipped and told him to never talk to her again, which prompted to 40 calls on a day, social media comments, random love and hate emails, all that shit. Sometimes he tried to touch her, sometimes he'd just stare at her during class. It continued well after our graduation, and our teachers talked to him, which didn't change anything. It's been almost 2 years now and she sometimes still gets the odd call, but he doesn't know where she lives. However, she has become super scared of going anywhere alone. She's become the epitome of "please come to the bathroom with me." She doesn't want to be alone with guys and refuses to go on dates. She doesn't use any social media anymore. So it did fuck her sense of trust in people and made her a lot less friendly towards strangers. You/Zandir responded. I dated a boy in late middle to early high school who didn't know how to take my breaking up with him. So he tried to kill us both in a car accident. I still tried to remain friends with him, 'cause hey, we all make mistakes, and I was trusting. Then he followed me across the country to my dream college. When he found out I was dating someone new, he freaked out. He started haunting my dorm and studio at nights, breaking into the dorm room, banging and wailing at the doors into the early hours, and harassing my dorm and studio mates about my whereabouts. And then he took a trip with 2 of our mutual friends and had an actual car accident in which he was just being negligent and killed both my friends. I didn't return to my dream college after that, and now I'm extremely nervous about being in the car with an imperfect driver. Last time he contacted me was at 3 a.m. I answered because I feared something terrible had happened again, but nah, he was just trying to find me. I blocked his number and I don't even think he knows what state I live in anymore. You/deleted responded. I recorded an album for a tiny indie label when I was in a punk band when I was 19. This was mid-90s. We had very minimal fame but played shows all over the country. We got a handful of fan mail from time to time. I got a fan letter from this girl who kind of gushed over me and said I was the reason she was starting a band. I wrote back with the standard thank yous and forgot about it. A few weeks later I was called into the label's office to look at picture of a missing girl that was faxed to them. I had never seen her before. Turns out this girl was 15, stole her parents' car and drove from Saskatchewan to Seattle. I ended up talking to her older sister on the phone and had found out that she had told all of her friends that I was her boyfriend and she was moving here to be in a band with me. She got here, just happened to run into some of my friends at a Denny's. I honestly don't think she knew they were friends when they first started chatting, where she talked about me. My friends thought it was weird that they had never heard of this person. Next day she got pulled over, arrested, and her dad had to fly down and drive her back home. She sent me a letter a few weeks later, to my home address, which was not where our fan mail came. She claimed she asked her parents and she thought they said yes, but it must have been a misunderstanding. I responded asking her to get help and not to contact me again. I never heard from her after that. She should be about 37 now, and every once in a while I wonder how things turned out for her. I hope things turned out okay. Betty Von Buttpants responded. A girl I dated still stalks me. She was abusive and raped me, which led to the breakup. I had a hard time getting her out of my life after that, but eventually I did the all act like a jerk routine and got her to cut off contact and block me. That was in 2012. Last year, my ex-girlfriend's roommate, not the stalker, went out with 2 friends, and one brought my stalker ex along. Now, I assumed she was casually checking in on my social media now and then, but the roommate said once she knew the other girl was connected to me, the entire conversation became about me for the night. She knew everything that had happened to me. Death of my parents, surgeries, people I hooked up with, things didn't broadcast on social media. She had some mutual friends reaching out to me to get information for her. She knew all my social media presence, most of the aliases LVE used online, and when sites I was active on. I blocked mutual friends, deleted almost all of my social media presence, or created new ones with very different names, and write fake entries, just in case. Last Christmas, I was in a department store getting last-minute stocking stuffers for my boyfriend, and saw her working the self-checkout. I didn't look directly at her and did my best to act like I didn't notice her leaning her back against the register I was at, and leaning her ear towards me, listening to my conversation with the cashier. I'm not super afraid of her actually trying to interact with me, but I wouldn't be surprised if she knows where Clive or work. Thanks for watching, everyone. Like and subscribe for more videos like this one. If you enjoyed this video and want to dive even deeper into our community, consider becoming a channel member. Members get exclusive perks like early access to videos, custom emojis, shoutouts, etc. And it's a great way to support the channel so I can keep bringing you the content you love.